And it wouldn't be fair to go any further than that. But this is an open secret at Westminster that those question marks have been around for a long time. And papers have been extraordinarily restrained in not publishing any of that speculation. And even whether they've got, maybe there are publications that have more information than I'm aware of, they've been restrained. Why? Because there's been a strong feeling that it's not in the public interest. And the bar for that these days for the press is really quite high. It's a whole different world to where we were in the John Major years. All those sleaze scandals were really just to do with cabinet ministers having affairs, having mistresses. Right. That doesn't wash anymore in modern day Britain. People actually don't.
Many of you may have already heard that Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is enjoying a family vacation in the beautiful Madeira. This marks his first holiday since taking office, and he is spending quality time with his wife Victoria and their children. However, what was meant to be a perfect family getaway quickly turned into a scandal, sparking discontent and anger among hundreds of tourists on the island. Reports indicate that Starmer and his family were involved in an incident of queue jumping, which ignited a wave of emotions among vacationers. This occurred during their visit to the popular Madeira tobogganing attraction, known for drawing large crowds seeking excitement. Eyewitnesses reported that some tourists waited in line for up to 3 hours, filled with anticipation for an unforgettable experience, only to see the Prime Minister and his family brazenly skip ahead in the queue. One frustrated tourist expressed his feelings, saying, "We arrived around 10 a.m. and lined up like everyone else. It was just so unfair."
So I think there is something bigger going on here, and it's annoying because I don't know what it is. And I know that the lobby of political journalists at Westminster feel the same. All of us instinctively feel that there is some big fact here that we're not being made.
I mean, I'm going to ask the question because nobody else will. Is it some kind of sex thing, do you think?
So there have long been rumours about Keir Starmer's private life, and they certainly aren't to do with any kind of doubts over his sexuality, if I can put it delicately. Okay. They are to do with his past and what the shape of his family really looked.
Even though we had pre-booked our tickets, we patiently waited in line with other visitors, including many Brits who had just disembarked from the cruise ships. The atmosphere was calm and orderly, and everyone was behaving politely, as is typical for true Britons who always queue. But then, suddenly, after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, everything changed in an instant. We spotted an approaching convoy, and our hearts began to race. Keir Starmer stepped out of the car with his security team, and without acknowledging us, headed straight to the front of the line. His 2 children were ushered into the attraction without any wait, while the rest of us stood in stunned disbelief, unable to comprehend what we were witnessing. The mood in the crowd quickly soured. People who had been waiting for hours began shouting, "Get to the back of the queue." The crowd erupted in cheers, but it did little to change the situation. It felt utterly unfair, and many of us couldn't hide our disappointment and anger. Other visitors also voiced their frustration with the Prime Minister's actions. One tourist remarked, "I understand he has a special position and security concerns, but it was still hard to accept." We all felt completely overlooked, and the frustration was palpable. Some canvassers included the phrase, "Thanks for inviting us. We didn't want to come."
One of our cabinet ministers has got a relationship with someone else. Who cares?
Except if it has some bearing on legislation, if it has some bearing on the conduct of policy or laws that are being made. I mean, that's when it starts to become a problem, isn't it?
So you have to have a strong public interest defence to publish this stuff. And I think to date, the media has felt that there hasn't been a strong public interest defence. And fairness to Sir Keir Starmer, whatever may or may not be going on in his past or in his private life, he has never posed with his family or children and acted like they're the perfect family and that he's the perfect dad and all of that, perfect husband, etc., etc. He hasn't done that. So there hasn't up until now been any kind of hypocrisy public interest defence.
The British take great pride in fair play and the ability to queue. It's not just a tradition, but a fundamental part of our identity. Witnessing someone in such a privileged position disregard these values was profoundly disappointing and even insulting. The incident quickly became a trending topic online, prompting many to question whether such behavior is fitting for someone in his role. Some critics went so far as to argue that it undermines his leadership qualities and credibility. What was meant to be a private family occasion has turned into a public relations disaster for the Prime Minister. This scandal has upset not only British tourists, but also visitors from other countries who witnessed this disgraceful moment. With each new reaction, more people are starting to recognize that this incident might point to a deeper issue. Does Keir Starmer truly fail to grasp the everyday concerns of ordinary citizens? Or is it merely a misunderstanding that has been blown out of proportion? What are your thoughts? Did Keir Starmer act appropriately by skipping the queue, considering his security needs? Or should he have waited like everyone else? In other news, the Labour Party has issued a serious warning regarding proposed changes to inheritance tax for farmers, stating that these changes could lead to poverty and even suicide among agricultural workers. Commentator Sarah Louise Robertson strongly condemned the tax measures suggested by Chancellor Rachel Reeves, highlighting the critical importance of protecting those who feed our nation.
What would you like an individual, a consumer, a household? What do you want them to think of your budget?
I've done everything in my power to protect ordinary working people, that we're beginning to fix our National Health Service, and that we're beginning to rebuild our country, fixing the foundations, to seize the enormous opportunities that I can see are out there and we must grasp together as a country.
On New Year's Eve, over 4,000 farmers across the UK lit beacons of hope to demonstrate that their fight against inheritance tax remains strong. This protest, organised by Martin Williams, a farmer from Herefordshire, has become a powerful symbol of unity and determination, as he is also one of the 5 farmers who spearheaded the rally in London on the 19th of November. In discussing Reeves' decision on the news, Robertson voiced her deep concern that the Labour Party had turned a blind eye to the pleas for help from farmers opposing the proposed changes, as the farming community has never faced such brutal attacks as it does now, she told reporters with frustration. So, she also cautioned that the suggested tax changes could lead to poverty and further deteriorate the mental health of farmers who are already under immense stress. Robertson highlighted the alarming statistics regarding farmer suicides, providing specific figures on their financial struggles and emphasizing that livestock farm workers typically earn between £9,000 and £22,000 a year, which barely allows them to make ends meet. Additionally, she pointed out the crushing debt burden that the agricultural sector faces, noting that most farms are, on average, £200,000 in debt.
It has winter, it has fuel, it has pensioners, and it has cut. There is no more emotive cluster of words that you could possibly imagine. I think the big question is really about the budget itself. Has this undermined Rachel Reeves's authority inside the party and inside Parliament to the point where some of the things that she was planning to do in the budget she pulls back from? I think we don't know at this stage, of course, but we have a very, very upset Labour Party. I was in the chamber for all of this, and I wouldn't say the mood was rebellious or angry. I thought the mood was beaten down. You know, they were sort of sad, unhappy, bemused, confused, genuinely upset. And I think she's done an awful lot of damage to the morale of this government early on.
She expressed her concern that the current pressures render the farming community especially susceptible to any additional financial strains. Robertson issued a strong warning that alterations in tax policy could have catastrophic effects on the UK agricultural sector. She later emphasized that such measures could result in the closure of even more farms nationwide, which would be a significant tragedy for many families. This will affect our country in terms of agricultural sustainability, food production, and much more, she told reporters with frustration. The commentator characterized the proposed changes to inheritance tax as the most destructive and irrational tax, which would deliver a severe blow to farmers and the agricultural community, pushing them to the brink of survival. Robertson further pointed out that these tax changes would yield the government only a relatively modest profit, making the situation even more absurd. According to her, the inheritance tax adjustments would generate merely £115 million annually, a mere fraction compared to the losses farmers would endure.
We're going to have to make difficult decisions. We need to fix the foundations before we can start rebuilding things in Britain. But unlike the previous government, I am going to be honest about the scale of the challenge. I'm going to level with people, and together we're going to rebuild our country based on that private sector business investment to get our economy growing. Because I asked the Treasury officials to give me an assessment of how much stronger the UK economy would be today if we'd have grown at just the average rate of OECD economies these last 14 years. And the answer is we'd be £140 billion bigger today, worth £5,000 for every family in Britain. We have got to grow our economy. It's the only way to improve living standards, keep taxes low, and have the money that we need for our dilapidated public services.
She conveyed her belief that this modest financial gain was not worth the potentially catastrophic effects it could have on farming communities. Robertson emphasized that this relatively small profit for the Treasury could lead to a genuine crisis for farming families and food production, which are already hanging by a thread. What are your thoughts on what we covered in today's video? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. See you next time.